See, what does the data say?
I don't have enough data to say what the data says. What I do have is enough information to pull on assessments that I think have a reasonable probability. CIA does not operate the way most people think that CIA operates. And CIA would never have the legal jurisdiction or the incentive to spy on an American president.
But do they have the legal jurisdiction to sell drugs? Which they do. We know that.
Do you know who the ultimate power is over CIA? Which branch of government? The executive branch. So
if he says it's cool to sell drugs, then it's cool
we
to
sell drugs.
Yo!
Dude, we do things that are classified for a reason.
Wow.
And we do it all in the best interest of protecting Americans. And I mean, I am the kind of person that's practical to a fault.
Right.
So if you tell me that I can either sell cocaine to impoverished Latin American countries or watch 100 Americans die, I'm a cocaine dealer.
Wow.
I'm just the way I work, dude. Just like
you are honest. I appreciate that.
The lives here are more valuable to me than the lives here. That's just, I know that makes me sound however that makes me sound, but that's just the way that's the way I'm wired. That's my analytical overlay.
Yeah.
So I have zero reason to believe and zero evidence to believe, zero experience to believe that Epstein is not a real person or was some kind of CIA manufactured plant or was a CIA asset or a CIA resource. Zero reason to believe any of those things.
What about foreign?
However,
here we go.
However, I have lots of reasons and lots of experience to make me believe that he was a intelligence resource for someone else. He may have been a resource for FBI because that's a whole different authority that's granted on investigating criminal activity inside the United States. And they work with shady people, they work with criminals, they work with sources of all kinds. So he may have had a relationship with FBI. I can't speak to that, but definitely not CIA. However, if I was an intelligence officer in any of the leading intelligence services, the French, the Israelis, the Russians, the Chinese, the Iranians, if I was an intelligence source for Germany, if I was an intelligence officer in any country that was interested in what's happening in the United States, I would 100% have devoted time and energy into tracking and trying to recruit Epstein into my asset of reporting sources because he had access, such privileged access, and he was so malleable in terms of what he needed and what he wanted so that he could be controlled. Those two things are exactly what you're looking for in the dream boat asset. You want someone who can be controlled by simple levers and someone who has incredible access. Those two things together make a dream boat case. And I mean, even for an unsophisticated service, right? Like your unsophisticated services being Ecuador or Panama or, Romania. Those are basic services, basic intelligence services. Your really refined, really talented services like Cuba, like MSS in China, like the SVR in Russia, those services could absolutely make someone like that sing and keep him well-fed and well-versed in the things that he needed and get incredible access back from him. And then when the natural course of American judicial process takes place, they can distance themselves from him as much as they need to, right? Because he's definitely not going to come out and be like, actually, guys, don't convict me because I'm reporting to the Russians. No, he's never going to say it. So it's all the hallmarks of a very good intelligence case carried out by a foreign country. Doesn't mean it is. It just has all those hallmarks. But a misinformed American public who is irrationally focused on CIA conspiracies, they see something that does look and feel like an intelligence operation, but they attribute it to CIA because of their analytical overlay from movies and TV, instead of attributing it to a truly adversarial service that could execute an operation like that.
What are the hallmarks that you see that really make you go, can't guarantee it, but damn?
The access. The fact that he was so close to so many people on both sides of the political debate, right? Conservatives and liberals. And he participated in extremely compromising behaviors with both sides. That doesn't happen unless either you are so disconnected from the American experience that you really do see everybody as just a tool, or you've been directed to build those relationships and incentivized to build those relationships and rewarded for building those relationships, because it takes a lot of effort. It takes effort to find common ground between very far-leaning people. And then it takes effort to build your life around being available to them when they're available, and then orchestrating these compromising activities. That takes so much time and effort. It's just not something that normal people participate in. Even the very wealthy come to a point where they're like, I could spend an hour with this guy, or I could spend an hour doing this other thing that's even more productive. And they will rationalize their way away against socializing and into business or something other more productive venture, right? So the access is the biggest thing. And then the second biggest thing is the incredible amount of compromising behavior that he participated in. Like, even your kinkiest, craziest people who don't follow any kind of moral or ethical compass, right? Even those folks have a hard time functioning at that level and also participating in that much compromising activity. That's documented, right? Like, oftentimes to get to a place where you're that morally and ethically flexible, you're not functional in other ways. He was somehow both. So he could have just been a very unique human being. I'm not going to say he wasn't, but probability-wise, he was probably helped or directed in that way, not necessarily magically gifted, but there's still a chance.
That's interesting. That's one of the things Eric speaks to, is that so Eric was heavily involved in finance and trading, and he met him and he was like, there's no way that guy knew the first thing about trading. He was like, there's no way. Like, you talk to him for 30 seconds and you're like, what is happening? This guy doesn't know anything about what he's talking about. Yeah. He's like, he basically word salads his way through stuff. He likens him to, if you've ever seen that meme with Steve Buscemi, who walks in, hello, fellow kids. And he's, 46 years old with a skateboard over his back. He said it was like that with trading, which I found hilarious.
So that what you're explaining to me now makes a third hallmark, because a third hallmark of an intelligence asset that's aided in their intelligence success is that they don't know what they're talking about. They end up in positions where they thrive and survive just off of their con game, their confidence. So eventually people just rationalize that this person doesn't know what the hell they're talking about, but I don't really care because they're a good time. So let's have a good time and let's not have any meaningful conversation. Perfect opportunity, because guess what that intelligence asset has to do? All they have to do is listen to the intelligent conversations between two people and provide that intelligence to someone else, or get them to participate in compromising behavior that they can use for either blackmail or some sort of documentation for the potential future, or, grab a phone or grab a laptop, or, let somebody into the party who's a trained intelligence operative to meet the other cases. Like, there's so many ways an intelligence officer can use an access agent and or a foreign reporting agent who has the kind of access and control levers that Epstein had. A big part of being a spy is learning to accept your vices, right? And there are predominantly in our lexicon, there are really three vices. There's drugs and alcohol. That's vice number one, which is essentially a dampening of anxiety and a dampening of stress and whatever else. That's the first vice. The second vice is greed or fame, right? Wanting something material to enhance yourself. And then the third vice is sex. And really, sex is a vice that's connected to intimacy and individual connection, right? We categorize them as sex. So these are three human vices that are international and that we all learn about all people, so that when we come to break down how people tick, you also want to break down what vice they lean towards. And sometimes their vice changes as you age, but usually your vice is pretty consistent for your entire life. And everybody listening right now is immediately saying, that's my vice, that's my vice, that's my vice, that's my vice. At CIA, fame and greed can't be one of your vices. So they kind of rule that out early on in the
Because you'd be too easy to like flip.
Because that's not a job that lends itself to fame or greed. There are people who are flipped on greed later on, but it's because they believe that they're worth more than what they're making, right? And that's your Aldrich Ameses of the world and your Richard Hansons of the world. Your people who compromise themselves to a foreign power in exchange for a paycheck.
Right.
But in every case of a converted American asset, there was also an element of sex. Because what happens is the people that are attracted to the kind of dangerous work that happens at CIA are people who are attracted to high stress, and they don't have a lot of personal connections. That's why they like operating solo, right?
If you had to flip a female asset, would you rather have sex or money in your back pocket?
Money.
Money, yeah.
Money. And you're also talking about a female asset would only be a non-American asset, because CIA doesn't recruit Americans.
Right.
So when I think of a foreign asset, the vast majority of what foreigners are looking for is solutions that can be reached with money, more so than solutions that can be reached with sex. Even then, let me just give you a real world example. Even when an American intelligence officer is developing or engaging in an operation against a foreign target of the opposite sex, when that target shows a sexual or romantic interest in the officer, it is critical that we don't reciprocate that romance or sexuality, that instead we find a way to confront them in a caring, loving, like in a caring, meaningful, transactional way, and paint the way for how their needs for connection will be solved with money. With financial stability, you can find a reliable partner. With financial stability, you can afford to buy a wife or buy a husband. With financial tools, you'll be able to gain enough notoriety or fame that everybody will want to be with you, right? Rather than engaging in any kind of romantic relationship that compromises the officer to the case.
Why is it considered that sex compromises the officer?
And two reasons. One, because American culture is a culture of sexual repression. So when we engage in sexual desires, it is usually because we feel guilty about exercising those same desires in our normal life. So we have to understand, and part of our training helps us understand our own vices. So when you understand your own vices and you see your own vices at play, you're like, oh, if I go down this road, it's what we call a slippery slope. If I go down this road, I'm just going to slip further down the slope and slip further towards compromise, and then only bad things happen. So that's one part of the reason why we do it. The second part of the reason why we don't engage in sex, or why we see sex as something that's compromising, is because it doesn't allow us to institutionalize the case itself. It makes the case dependent on the person because it's a romantic transaction, rather than creating a reliance between the target and the institution that is CIA or that is American national security. As long as you can institutionalize the case, it means that case has longevity. Because one day I will leave this country and you will come into this country, and I need to make it so that the loyalty is to the institution, so that when you take my place, the asset keeps working with you. Mossad are one of the best in the world at honey traps.
Really?
Against American targets specifically.
Interesting. Why wouldn't they be working against American targets? So we go after allies.
Yeah, and allies all go after the United States. That's the problem with being the biggest. Right? We had major flaps in France and Germany. I mean, just in our adult lives, right? Remember when Angela Merkel discovered that Obama's NSA was spying on Germany, and it caused a huge rift, right? Like it happens. One of the biggest, most public cases of American espionage was a naval officer that was recruited by Israel and giving away nuclear secrets about submarines.
Was it sexpionage?
Nope. In that case,
really?
In that case, he was Jewish, and they targeted him because he was Jewish.
Ah, interesting.
So that's not to say, again, it's not to say anybody's wrong. It's just to say that there is a leverage there that can be exploited. In some cases, it's ideology about your faith or about your community or about your value system. In other cases, it's ideology about what you believe is right or wrong, or who you believe is more powerful or less powerful, right? We have a saying at CIA that you are either in control or under control. There's no third option. So you are either in control of a situation, in control of your behavior, in control of your thoughts, in control of your outcomes, or you are under control of someone else's thoughts, someone else's behavior, someone else's plans, someone else's outcomes. It's up to you to ask yourself the question, which am I at any given time? And what steps am I taking to test that I am accurate in my assessment of my current status?
I like that a lot. Are there people that are unflippable?
Yes, I'm going to say yes. And when I say yes, what I mean is that the probability of them being converted is so small that it's not worth the investment of time and energy to try to convert them. But the truth is that we all go through points of our lives where we are more susceptible to being flipped than we would care to realize. And that's oftentimes what we're trained to do, is target those individuals who are going through that phase of life where they have the right access and the right life conditions where compromising behavior is something that you can rapidly develop in them.
What are the right conditions for that switch to be rapid?
So there's major points in the typical life where you can anticipate financial needs, relationship needs, and health needs. Those are the major points that you want to look at. So think about your senior diplomat, your senior executive, your senior military officer who's a few years away from retirement, a few years away from no longer being relevant and no longer being paid by the state. Even better if they are working for like a third country or a competitor First Nation country where they aren't going to be taken care of financially very well in their retirement sunset years, right? But they're still 2 or 3 years out. It's a fantastic target because they have tons of monetary need. Same thing is true at the opposite end of the spectrum, where people are just starting out, but they don't have any financial, but they want to rush to their financial success, but they're not there yet. So they'll engage in compromising behavior, trading their information or their access in exchange for extra money, right? So you've got to always be looking for those points in a life where financial need becomes relevant. Sick children, aging parents, changes in career, hitting ceilings of careers. Like, these are all points that exist worldwide for all people, right? Then you have relationship issues. People who are old enough that they should be married, but they're not married, or they believe that they should be married, but they're not married, or they've been divorced, or they've been outcast, or they've been whatever else. They pick their career over their relationship, right? These are all people who are very susceptible to approaches that solve the relationship problem. Similarly, you've got the same thing that exists in the business world. People who are struggling in business, people who are trying to make a business, people who are trying to make a business that's super lucrative. They're missing certain elements in relationships. They don't know the right people. They're not connected to the right buyers, whatever else it might be. So it's a perfect place to step in and connect 2 points. And this person becomes wealthy because of an official business deal, but their loyalty is to you because you become their lead source, essentially, right? And then you've got health issues, and health issues they apply to the individual, but they also apply to the individual's family and friends and everything else. So if you are an Iranian, you have no access to Western medicine. So if you're an Iranian nuclear scientist and there's a rare eye condition in your mother, it's the perfect time for a Western power to come in and say, we have a hospital that can take care of your mother if you have a nuclear secret that you're willing to trade. And that's really how it all works. That same nuclear scientist 10 years earlier would have never talked to you. But today, right now, they will. There's so much marketing parallel between espionage recruitment operations and just standard business marketing. You've just got to give them the right message at the right time to get them to take the right action and then deliver the outcome.
No doubt. No doubt. Andrew Bustamante, where can people follow you?
You can find me on my homepage, everydayspy.com. You can find me on social media at everydayspy. And then if you want to find my podcast, I'm on all the major platforms and on YouTube. Thanks to Mr. Tom Bilyeu for recommending that last time I was here. And that's the Everyday Spy podcast.
Love it. Thank you for coming on.